Hey team, I hope you're doing well today. I'm here with my friend Josh Faskowitz, a computational neuroscientist researcher at Indiana University. I got it right?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I got it right. Okay, cool. And he's here today to tell us a little bit about his job, what a neuroscientist does, what he does, and what it takes to get to a career in neuroscience. Thanks for being with us here today, Josh.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm pretty stoked to catch up and tell you all about neuroscience
Okay.
and everything else I can say. My brain, I'll try to spew it out.
And you guys are in for a treat today. Josh is a great speaker, so he's pretty fun to listen to. So can you just start by telling us what is computational neuroscience?
Right, yeah. Oh, that is a good broad question.
Yeah, we'll start general and we'll work into the details.
So what is computational neuroscience? So right. So we have computation, which is computational, let's say. It evokes, working with code, working with mathematics, right? We're going to compute something. And then we have neuroscience, which is the study of the brain. So computational neuroscience is using code, using mathematical tools to study data about the brain. So what I do every day is I get on my computer, I write a bunch of code to analyze some brain data. Whereas I'm not in a lab with beakers or chemicals, or I don't even actually ever see real brains. I actually do my research with magnetic resonance imaging, or MRI. I'm sure you've seen it on TV, like where they put someone in to get the scan, and then there's a picture that comes up, and it says, "Oh, this person's brain is lighting up," or something.
Those are the ones where you get the colorful pictures of the brain?
Yes.
Like where you see like the red is like more active and the blue is less active.
Exactly. So we have that data, we get that data, and then my job as a graduate student, as a researcher, is we ask a question, like first we have to say like, well, how do we make this data like what do you do with it? Like that data is just a bunch of ones and zeros in a computer. You have to frame it in such a way where you can start analyzing it and applying mathematical tools. And I can get into that about like what kind of tools we apply. But it's basically taking that, like you sit there, you get your brain scanned, and then the person who's operating the machine hands that data to me and says, Josh, please find something.
Patterns in this.
Something cool. Yeah, exactly. Pattern. That's a great way. That is a great way of saying, of describing what we're looking for. We look for patterns in the data about the brain. So that's computational neuroscience. How about that?
And so, perfect. And then, this wasn't a question I was planning on asking, but we'll go for it anyways. So do you like have a question and then go scan somebody's brain, or do you take like random brain scans and just look at them and try to figure out what's going on?
I'd say, so our lab, we kind of have a overall interest in looking at a certain type of brain data. So what our lab does is we actually model the brain as a network, which is pretty cool. So, and I'll get into that, but so we kind of approach all our questions with this broad interest of characterizing the brain as a network. And so we have like projects within that where you can say, well, how does the brain network of a healthy person look like in comparison to the brain network of someone with a mood disorder or someone with a neuropsychological deficit? So in that way, we kind of have questions that are guiding us, but also we have just broad ideas, or we want to just kind of explore like what are the limits that we can push for a certain method. But let me get into the brain networks, because this is like the fun stuff. Okay, so neuroscience, so neuroimaging specifically, you put someone in a scanner, you take a picture of their brain, boop, 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 and then you see somewhere light up. But that's not the whole story, right? This part can light up, but maybe this part is more dim. And then this part's lighting up too a little bit. And then this part and this part, this part. What we know about the brain is that actually the brain acts in a distributed manner. we know that there's like special regions of the brain that if you lesion them, for example, you'll have a hard time speaking and stuff like that. But mostly the
Lesion
brain.
means to take a slice out of.
Yes, good one. But mostly the brain works in a distributed manner. So what I'm trying to say is that you cannot ever analyze one brain region in a vacuum or by itself. The brain, what we think in our lab is that the brain is best understood by looking at it as a network. So what we do is we measure the connections from here to here and here to here and here to here and here to here and here to here. We actually measure a network of hundreds of regions and see how they're all interrelated. So the mathematics that we use is the same mathematics that, for example, like Facebook uses. You could think about it as like a social network, like I'm friends with one person, so we have a connection, and then that person's friends with another person, and then maybe I'm friends with that other person too. And you start forming a mesh, a network. You can do certain computations on that network, and networks all around us. You could think about the freeway system and the roads as a network. You have a highway that goes in between cities. You have little roads, and the network is just the roads that go in between cities. So what I'm trying to say is networks all around us. They're also in our brain.
Can I try to summarize what you said?
Yes.
Can you tell me if I'm like totally on? Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe we could say that sometimes traditional neuroscientists focuses on just looking at like one part of the brain at a time. But your guys' theory is that it's more important or not more important, but at least also important to look at not just what does this part of the brain do or what does that part of the brain do, but like why and how this part of the brain talks to that part of the brain. And the degree to which this part of the brain talks to that part of the brain.
And like they're communicating, and maybe there's a third area that's also modulating that communication. And yeah, exactly. But then you even you look at hundreds of regions in concert. That's where it gets really exciting.
Okay, that was going to be my follow-up question. Like, how many areas of the brain are you tracking at once?
Yeah. Oh, that is $1 million question in the field. Some people would argue that maybe you could say there's around 300 to 400 regions. There's like old neuroscientists. There's an old neuroscientist called Brodmann, and he actually dissected brains and actually created areas based on the ways that cells looked. I think it was under certain stains. He actually has these areas, and I think he only has on the level of tens, I think maybe 30, 40 Brodmann areas, but you have to fact check me on this one.
I'll fact check you on that one.
Yeah. Okay. See how many Brodmann areas there are. But since Brodmann, who was around 100 years ago, really, if you ask different questions, you'll get different answers about how many areas of the brain. And then it depends on the data that goes in. So like when you're looking at it at a cellular level, maybe some areas you can really see the differences between this area and this area. But maybe an MRI, which has a lot lower of a resolution, it takes a more fuzzy picture, MRI does. Maybe you cannot see those fine distinctions, but you can see maybe a lot of other regions all over the place. So we actually don't know. There is no answer to how many regions there are, but there is a lot of arguments about how many regions there are.
It's one of the big questions. That's what people are trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then are there any like specific projects you'd like to, maybe you could like fill us in on or tell us like what's a specific question you've tried to answer, or just not like all of, just like, do you have an example of one?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, we work on a lot of projects about brain networks. We have, we're making our brain network do research about brain networks.
Nice.
But let's see, a specific project that we're working on. So the project that I worked on a couple of years ago, that's kind of fun, is that, so we have this brain network. Let's say there's 100 regions, but but some regions, it's like some regions are in concert with each other and some regions are not in concert. And what you can do on a network is you can do a mathematical computation called clustering. You can cluster different regions. You can partition different regions so that they, how do I describe this?
Like do or don't interact with each other?
Yeah. Like your brain is not 100 equal parts, let's say. If you decided that you wanted to say it's 100 regions, it's not like 100 equal regions. Some regions are more focused on attention. Some regions are more focused on sleep or just rest.
Mm-hmm.
Some regions are more focused on, we know the occipital lobe, for example, is like very much focused on vision and vision processing. Or the auditory cortex, right? Or the somatomotor cortex. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to take the brain network and say, can we use the brain network, the information about all these connections, and find different clusters? But we're not going to tell the computer which areas are the vision regions, which areas are the motor regions, but mathematically, can we figure out like which areas are distinct from each other? Like it should show us that the vision areas are different than the auditory areas.
And does that have to do with the amount of connections formed between the different areas?
Yeah.
So
what we were measuring is a proxy, or we actually can't measure the number with MRI data. We cannot measure the absolute number of neurons that go from one area to the other. We kind of estimate, like we have an estimation of how much connectivity goes from here to here. But so that's the data we're working with. And then it is exactly what you said about using the connection data and seeing whether like the brain is broken up. Based on you can kind of think of like the outside of the brain. The outside of the brain, the gray matter, it's like, that's like where all the, that's where you have all your synapse. Like that's where the exciting fluctuations are going on. That's where you have the synapses. And then the white matter on the inside, that's the wiring that connects all the gray matter. The white matter is the wiring that connects all the gray matter. And so that's what we're measuring, the white matter that goes between the gray matter.
Word.
That's
cool. That's like that.
Single, just like my words.
I worked very briefly in a neuroscience lab in college, like very briefly, and this is the kind of stuff we were doing. It's cool to like hear how it's changed and advanced. This is dope. Thank you, Josh. Okay, I'm gonna switch to some questions that are less like about what you do and like more about your life experience. Not your life experience, but like some more like kind of like practical stuff for like kids trying to get into science.
Awesome.
Yeah. But maybe we'll have you back another time so you could talk more about neuroscience, because I like talking about neuroscience. So just like how did you get to where you are now? Like, can you talk about your educational kind of pathway, or like careers or jobs or all that kind of stuff?
Well, I tried very hard in high school.
He did. I was friends with Josh in high school. He did much harder than I did. Much harder.
So we all were nerds and stuff. Yeah, we're all nerdy. But in high school I was taking the science class. I mean, trying to get into AP classes, but also just like, I mean, I had good teachers who like motivated me to get into it. I sometimes consider like by the end of high school is kind of like the smartest I've ever been, because like I knew the Krebs cycle, like I knew like all the details of all that stuff. I still have that AP bio book in my brain, the one with the black cover, and like I've got that AP bio book in my closet over there. Yeah, it's Campbell, I think.
Yeah,
right?
Campbell.
Campbell, yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I don't know. It was kind of fun. I mean, you end up taking pride in something when
Mhm.
you're studying really hard. Anyway, so I went to college, and in college,
Where'd you go to
um,
college?
USC, the University of Southern California. Right on. Huh. So I went to USC, and I thought I was a pre-med student, but I actually
As we
didn't
all were.
enjoy. Yeah, as we all were, exactly. I didn't enjoy my first couple of years in pre-med classes, and the reason is they just didn't stimulate me. Like they didn't like I was just talking about it, like where you take pride in the work when you're doing a really good job, but my pre-med classes weren't fulfilling because it was all about like rote memorization of and I felt like the tests were just unfairly hard, and the point of the test was just to weed me out. And so I was
Mhm.
like, well, hey, I'm just not, I don't want to do pre-med if it's just memorizing stuff. But the thing is, I was in I was a neuroscience major because I was like a pre-med. I could have been
Mhm.
biology or neuroscience, but I was like, I still like my neuroscience class, so I'm just gonna keep on rolling, uh,
Or-
doing neuroscience. And then I ended up taking higher and higher level neuroscience classes. And what happens in the university is that your first classes are like 200 people, but then you go higher up you go, you get smaller and smaller, you have more and more attention from the professors, and the professors are actually teaching something they actually like, because it's like this is like what they, their passions, like the further and further. So a combination of just like taking higher level neuroscience classes and becoming more and more interested led me to pursue. I ended up working in a neuroscience lab, it was called the emotion and cognition lab, and we were actually inviting older adults into the lab and showing them really crazy pictures to get them emotionally aroused. And we were
Mhm.
testing their memory to see if emotional arousal, to be like we were showing them really crazy pictures of of like bugs and garbage and even some nasty chemical stuff, so that they would just
Mhm.
be so like startled. And then we give them memory tests and we'd see how that affected their memory. So I was just a volunteer in that lab, and then I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. I had a mentor, a graduate student mentor who I worked for, Allison, and I was like, what, I want to do what Allison does. I want to be a grad student. So after graduation, I didn't go straight to graduate school. I worked for 2 years as a research assistant in a lab at USC. So I stayed up in LA. And then after that, I did all my applications. It's like a whole, you have to do all these tests to get into grad school. But eventually, I found my way to Bloomington, Indiana, to work with a professor who studies these brain networks, because I thought, oh, this is cool. Like it combines my interest in computers and mathematics, but it also has like the brain. And we're
Mhm.
working on pretty cutting edge like problems, and I get to write code every day. I don't have to touch brains, which could be gross in formaldehyde or something. So yeah, there are some ups and downs. I like to say that they're the sulci and the gyri of life, but uh, that was a joke, like because sulci are like this and gyri are like this. But
It's
yeah,
a nerd joke.
that was a yeah.
Deep nerd joke.
I think that's generally how I got to here. I
Mhm.
got, but more broadly, maybe more on a philosophical level. I got to here because I mean, just having like a interest in and making the thing that was in front of me like a passion, or like having like a
Mhm.
good attitude about it too, what goes a long way. And also relying on others, and surrounding yourself with a good team, because no one ever gets through, even like in high school, having study groups or having friends to go eat at lunch, or like in a research lab, like having colleagues who are going to help you answer like this math question, or this other problem you're having with your computer, and then I provide computer advice for other people. So having a good team around you too is like really helpful in general.
Awesome. And then I got like three more questions for you. they're all pretty straightforward. The next two are, what's your favorite thing, and what's something that's a real challenge for you as a neuroscientist? Yeah. So I'll let you, whatever order you want to take those two in.
Okay.
You want to go with the good or the bad first?
Yeah, or can I put them in the same answer?
You go crazy, Josh. Knock yourself out.
Yeah. But I could put them in the same. Like, so some of the most alluring things about neuroscience also are huge challenges that are real pain. Like, the brain is crazy complex. Somehow there's trillions of connections, right? Millions of neurons, if not billions. You have to fact check me. So we have an organ here that uses 20% of your brain's energy of your body's energy consumption, right? And it's all these neurons firing, but there's like somehow that leads to me talking to you right now. Somehow, like, all these individual units are like creating consciousness. I mean, there's no magic. It's just a bunch of cells firing, and somehow they evolved to do that too. So part of the best thing is like working on a problem that, like, there's always going to be questions, because our brain is so crazy complex. I understand that like astronomy and like physics is hard and stuff, but like you get like like Einstein made an equation and there's gravity and there's nothing to argue, right? But like try having like a theory of emotion, of like human emotion, or like coming up with an explanation. It's really confound. Like, there's so many confounds. It's so complex. So that's like something that I really enjoy. It's also a real big challenge because you don't get the satisfaction of knowing that you have like the truth. We only have in neuroscience, in my field, where we can't slice a brain open, a human brain open, because that's illegal. So we take images. There's noise in our data, and there's all this. We can't get any super conclusive answers about a lot of the questions that we're asking. But that's fun. That's challenging. So I think that's how.
That's a great answer.
Both questions.
Yeah. Thank you. And then last question is, do you have any advice for the next generation of scientists, people who want to become scientists in the future?
Yeah. Okay. So super simple, practical advice is to learn computer code.
Yeah.
I love giving this advice. Even the graduate, I'm a fourth year graduate student right now. And even the advice I give to the first year graduate students is learning code. Getting a computer to do something for you is much better than doing it yourself. So that includes, there's special languages for statistics, for example. Like try doing a correlation by hand. That stinks. But getting a computer to do a correlation in less than a hundredth of a second is super easy. So learning computer code is like really good advice that could help you in science, but it could also help you in business if you need to show that the numbers, what better way to like show that this campaign worked for this advertising campaign if like, I have the numbers here, like I crunched the numbers. Like you want to be a number cruncher, right? You want to show that you have evidence of something working. So code, that's like a big piece of practical advice. And then I think I mentioned before, like surround yourself with good people who are going to ignite you, like ignite your passion, and just surrounding yourself with good people. Like it's a two-way street. It's mutually beneficial. Like you help them, they help you, and you go at it as a team. Some people call it a abundance mentality. You're helping people. There's enough good fortune to go around that if you help people around you, everybody, a rising tide lifts all of the ships. It's like one of the things, one of the truisms. And then I don't know, just be positive. Positivity is like a good, I don't know, it's like a good, that's like a good policy.
Ever the
And
optimist.
yeah, an optimist. And I don't know, have be okay. Probably this is good advice, but I think like having many interests, like don't ever be too narrow. Like as a grad student, one of the things they say is to read widely. You don't know if your next good idea is actually going to come from zoology. Maybe they're like have a mathematical model there or something that like you can apply to, and it's like a perfect match or something. But like as it applies to even just in high school, like just like I don't know, like maybe art class is like super fun, or like maybe that's like a cool outlet, or maybe you find the connections between your what they were doing at this time in history and like what the history of science of like biology, like where can you place this scientific discovery in the history. So also like starting to put together all different topics and being interested in a lot of things, I think, and being well-rounded like that is good advice, I think. But what do I know? I don't know. I'm just
Nobody
just
knows
so
anything,
young.
dude.
Yeah, no one knows anything.
Awesome. Well, that's all the questions I have for you.
Cool.
Thank you so much for coming and talking to us.
Yeah, hopefully people like computational. I hope I didn't scare them like that.
I don't think you did, dude. I think that was great.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, guys, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments or shoot me an email, and I'll forward them on to Josh. Thanks for being here. Have a great day.
See you later.